Hello, this is Andrew Osio, and this mini lecture is about 8 things that you may not know about Maya's interface. The first thing I'm going to take a look at is the outliner, which is a great, powerful tool for seeing your objects, especially if you have a large number of objects that might be on top of each other. It's a very easy way to see them. What most people don't know is that you can actually see and use the outliner from two different views by clicking on the bottom line here of the outliner and dragging it up. That will reveal the same information from two different vantage points. Then you can use another trick, which is clicking on the wheel or the middle mouse and dragging an object from the bottom of the list all the way to the top, and that is a group. So it's a very powerful function. Another thing that we can do with that same technique of click and dragging is actually we can assign textures to a material without actually using the hypershader. So let me make an object here, and by default the object has a Lambert 1 shader, and I got to the attribute by clicking Control A. And I'm going to open up the hypershader right now, and I'm going to slide down to where it says textures instead of materials, and I'm just going to create a image file node. And that same node I can add to multiple channels on any shader I want that's actually visible in the attribute editor. So I'm going to re-click on my object here. My Lambert tab is still open, and say I'd like to middle mouse click and connect this to the color channel, excuse me, or the diffuse channel. I can quickly do that without going through the hypershader itself or any other elaborate means. And I've used one node to connect to two channels within a matter of seconds. So it's a very handy little trick. You may not even need to use the hypershader for the most part, and that's another little trick I'd like to show you, is that maybe we'd like to take this object here and give it a brand new shader without using the hypershader at all. And we can do that by using the render tab, or the rendering tab, excuse me. If you click on the rendering tab, lights are available, but these 5 gray spheres are very useful for making default new shaders that you may not have right away. For example, if you want to take an object and give it a new blend shader, you just click on this gray sphere here, and it gives you a new highlight sphere. A lot of modelists prefer using a blend highlight shader because it's a little easier to read when they're modeling. Now if I want to take that same shader that I've just created, let's say I'm going to change its color a little. What if I'd like to make a new shader on a new object, not the same one, but basically start out with the same values? And that's another little trick you have with the attribute editor, the idea of presets and copy and pasting values. So let me make another sphere. I just move it off to the side here, and I'm also going to make a nice blend shader for that. What I can do is I can copy the values between two different similar nodes using the attribute editor's preset concept. Let's select that shape again, go to blend, and I'm going to go to presets and save a blend preset. As you can see, I've already saved a couple already. I'm just going to say red blend, save the attribute preset, and then when I go over here, that presets are available in the preset list. There's my new red blend preset that I just made, along with 2 others I made earlier. And I can just do a replace, and then these 2 shaders have identical values. It's a lot faster if you have a lot of shaders that are similar. Maybe you have shaders that have similar lighting qualities but have different image files. That's an easy way to create the shaders and make them match very quickly. Another thing that you can do with the attribute editor is actually select objects and nodes that are not easily selectable. Let's just take a dynamics example here. And this is not specifically about how to make a good dynamic example. I'm just going to do something very simple where I make some particles, and they're going to, some of them would maybe collide with a piece of geometry. So I'm just going to create an emitter. And this is not so much about a dynamics example. It's just an example of how to actually modify your scene file. So I'm just going to take the particles, select them first, and then the plane, and then we're going to do a make collide. And if I run my animation, I need to do a few seconds. The particles are going to collide and bounce off of that plane. That's fine. Well, what if I change my mind? What if I didn't want them to collide anymore? Well, one thing that you can do is that when you ever have geometry collide with each other, there's a node called the GeoConnector node. It would be really nice if I could just get rid of that node because maybe it's broken, bad, or I've changed my mind. And so I can select that node by highlighting the tab and then going down to this button at the bottom of the attribute editor called Select. So I'm going to select that, and then I've actually selected the GeoConnector node, a node that I can actually select using the perspective camera. And if I delete that node, basically the connection is broken, and then the particles are not going to collide with the plane anymore. So that's another neat little trick. And those are the 5 main tricks for the interface that I was going to show you. I was going to show you 3 more modeling tricks. So let's bring up an object here. Modeling in perspective can be very difficult because basically when you're modeling in perspective, you can move an object in 3 directions, but your camera can only see in 2. And so there's really no way to know how precise you are. So the concept of moving an object in one direction or constraining to axis is very common by just clicking on the axis and move. That you probably know. One thing you may not know is how to constrain to 2 axes at the same time. One neat little trick about this is using it with the scale tool. So if I'm using the scale tool, I can scale in one axis or another at a time. But if I'd like to scale in 2, I simply hold down the control button and click the axis that I don't want to scale in, and I can scale in the other 2 in a uniform fashion. Other things that we can do from a channel box point of view, just going to click on the channel box point of view over here. What if I really wanted to change some things in the channel box and control the channels interactively? One of the more common ways to do it is your primitive you may need more subdivisions. And if you highlight a channel here, even multiple ones, you have the ability to click with the wheel in any camera view and drag left and right, and you can interactively change the number in the channel box, which in turn changes the object. So that's another cool little trick.